You must have heard of the saying, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, right? Okay, so let me tell you a quick story. So there was a time a while ago, I had to commute really far to work, right? I had to drive really far to work, and I had to receive a lot of calls as well. So I had to get a driver. So what had happened was I got this person, right? And this boy was absolutely fantastic. What I liked about him was he was very self-aware, right? He always tried to dress formal, very clean shirt, pressed and iron trousers, work shoes, and everything. And every time I was going for a meeting, he would say to me, "Oh, it looks more upscale if he carried my laptop." So he would walk with me into the meeting, carry my laptop, place it down, place all the files down and everything, and then sit outside the office just in case I needed anything. He was he was very hands-on. So after a while, I started to involve him in my work. So sometimes when I'm busy, he would go and do the running around for me and everything. He was absolutely fantastic. So he worked with me for about 2.5, 3 years, and then I didn't need him anymore, so he had to leave. However, he kept in touch. So whenever I'm like really busy, he would come in and help me out. So at some point, he disappeared for about a year. I didn't hear from him. And then all of a sudden, he calls me from the blues and he said to me, okay, so he started working with somebody and the person had introduced him to, I'm rushing through this because I don't want to waste the time. So, and the person had introduced him to exportation. I think they were exporting coal or something, charcoal. And he told me the business was very lucrative and everything. So he had secured an apartment and he had his own car and everything. So whenever I didn't want to drive, he would come and take me where I needed to go in his car. Again, he did that for about 6 months and I didn't hear from him for about maybe almost 2 years or something. And then one day he calls me from the blues and he said to me that he got an office and everything and I had to come and see his office. So I promised I would come. I mean, he had been a really good person to me. So about 3 weeks later to a month later, I was in the area where his office was supposed to be. So I decided to stop by. As I got there, I saw a building, right? And as I walked into the building, I saw a receptionist. So I told the receptionist, I thought maybe he had an office in the building. So I told the receptionist, okay, I'm here to see so and so person. She asked me to sit down and everything. So anyway, about five minutes later, she was a bit busy. She said, I heard her say over the phone, "Oh, somebody is here. This person, blah, 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 is here to see the MD." And I was like, wow. Anyway, about a few minutes later, he called the reception and said, "Oh, bring her upstairs. That's my sister and everything. That's my big sister." So she took me upstairs and everything. As I got upstairs, he busted out of his office. He was really talking and he called all his partners, who happened to be foreigners, by the way, mostly Asians. So he called them out of their offices and he gave a short speech and everybody applauded and everything. I was dumbfounded. I had tears. I was laughing and crying and I was so happy for him. I was genuinely happy for him, but it was such an overwhelming situation. Anyway, they took me out to lunch. My jaw literally dropped, because this is a classic story of rags to riches. Very true story. Also, my friend had told me about something that happened to her. So she was dating this man, right? And the man had a very wealthy friend. Now his wealthy friend had gotten a divorce or something from his wife and they had 3 kids. So the man had to get like a maid nanny, so to speak, and everything. One thing she said was that when she met the nanny or the maid or whatever, the lady was absolutely pleasant. But one thing she knew about her was she genuinely loved those children. Like she took care of those children like she gave birth to them and everything. Fast forward to about 2.5 years later, my friend was at the airport. She was on the queue to the normal cabin section, obviously. So she was on the queue and everything. And then all of a sudden she heard someone say, "Oh, auntie," and everything. And then she saw the lady looking very beautiful and everything. So the lady was with one of the children. So she said to the lady, "What are you doing here?" and everything. "Oh, are the kids traveling?" And the lady said to her, "Oh, myself and the kids are going on holiday. My husband will come and meet us there later." And my friend, she said, she was like, "What? You two got married?" She said, "Oh yeah," and everything, And then my friend said to her, "Oh, so have you checked in already?" She said, "Oh yeah, we're just waiting at the first class lounge." Anyway, and then they exchanged pleasantries and the lady left and everything. My friend said literally her jaw dropped. Think about it. The last shall be first, right? What I'm trying to say is, most of the time we look down on people that we believe we're better than. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's human nature. We look down on them because in reality we think what good can come out of them, right? I mean, this is just a common manual worker. This is just a common driver. This is just a common maid. Forgetting that we don't know their fate. We don't know what the future holds for them. If you're familiar with the Bible, you can imagine how people must have looked down on Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, right? Because he was handicapped. So people must have looked down on him like, what good can come out of this one? This is just a cripple. Do you understand? And thing is, he ended up eating at the king's table for the rest of his life, right? Okay, so I like to draw from examples that other people can relate to. So I'm going to draw from the Christian religion. Please apply this to your life as it fits. So I want to tell the story of Lazarus and the rich man. Now, please keep in mind, a lot of people liken this story to an actual event when it's just a parable. And a parable is a short fictitious story that is designed to either teach a moral or a spiritual lesson, right? So when Jesus told the story, keep in mind, please, he was actually in conflict with the Pharisees. Now, it was recorded that the Pharisees were lovers of money. And when they heard Jesus' stories, they derided him, which means they ridiculed him, right? And Jesus said to them, you who justify yourselves before men, and God sees your heart. For what is highly esteemed to man is actually an abomination to God. What he was trying to say in that instance is that, they come out and prove to people that they are good people, they help people and they're kind and everything. However, God sees their hearts and their hearts are very wicked. They have no love, lack of care or concern for anybody else. Now, so he then went on to tell his disciples about the parable. So that was it was a parable about a rich man and a very poor man. In a nutshell, the story was that the rich man was very rich and he lived a lavish life, and the poor man was so poor and the rich man refused to help him. He saw him every day at his gates, but refused to do anything for him. And the only thing the poor man depended on to feed on was the crumbs that fell off the rich man's table. Now, fast forward to, and then they both died, right? And after they died, the roles were reversed. So the poor man was in heaven beside Abraham, and the rich man was condemned to hell. Now, whilst in hell, the rich man was suffering and being tormented. Then he was now asking the poor man to please give him some water because the suffering was so much. Then he also requested that if the poor man could go back to the world and warn his people about being good people, do you understand? So that they don't end up in hell like him. Now, Jesus can never contradict himself. So what is he really trying to say with this story? Now, to understand it, we have to really break it down. First of all, let's look at death, right? What is death? Death is a state of unconsciousness, right? Now, if you remember Mary and Martha's brother Lazarus, when he died, Jesus had said Lazarus was asleep, right? Which harmonizes with other scriptures that show that the dead have no conscious thoughts. Hold that thought. Now, let's look at what Jesus says about heaven, right? So he says, no one has ascended into heaven except the one who came down from heaven, which is the Son of Man, which is Jesus himself, which means no one has gone to heaven just yet. Does that make any sense? So let's look at what he says about hell. He says, but rather fear the one who is able to destroy the body and soul in hell. What he's doing in that sense is associating hell with total destruction, right? So when something is totally destroyed, it ceases to exist. It doesn't exist anymore. So that describes hell as a place of total destruction, rather than a place with conscious and tormented dead people. Does this make sense? This statement gives clear understanding that after death, people are not immediately taken to heaven or hell, but rather they await a future time when they will be resurrected from the dead, right? and then made to face judgment. And then their fate is determined whether they go to heaven or hell, right? Okay, so let's liken this back to that story. So what had happened was, after Lazarus and the rich man died, Jesus had fast forwarded the story to a time, a future date, when they had already been resurrected from the dead, and when they had already faced judgment. Does this make sense? So they had already done that. Now, when the rich man was asking Lazarus to go back to warn his people about being good people and everything, he had been in a state of unconsciousness, so he must have lost track of time. He didn't realize they were already in the future. Now, at this time, it was too late. He was asking for the impossible, because at this time, this was a future date, right? His family and his loved ones would have made their choices already, and their fates would have been determined as well. Am I making any sense? Okay, so he was asking for the impossible. Already, the people he wanted to warn would have already made their decisions in life, and they would have passed away as well. And they would have been resurrected from the dead, and their fates would have been determined whether they would be in heaven or hell. So it was impossible. So what Jesus really meant with that parable is that be good now. Do good now. If you have an opportunity to be good or to help others, do it now. Don't put it off, because you don't know what the future holds. You don't even know what tomorrow holds. See, most of the time, the same people you encounter going up the ladder are the same people you will encounter coming down. Depending on how good you are to them or how you've acted towards them, they may return the same favor or lack of it thereof. Namaste.